Hello again. I'm Art Herbig, Executive Director of Cinema Center, here to hopefully stay out of the way of my lovely panelists as we have a chat about what we've just seen. I want to give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about why you're here, and then we can, move on in the conversation. So let's start.
I'm Kristen Giant. I see some friendly faces out there. And I think that I'm here because I tend to do work where I help platform people that have been I loved when they said, we talk about second chances, but so many people haven't had a first chance. So even saying deplatformed, it's like a lot of voices haven't ever been given a platform. They're not voiceless, they're platformless. So that's some of the work that I try to do.
I'm Jeremy McClish. I'm with Habitat for Humanity here locally, and one of the things that we do is just collaborate with any and everybody to help homeownership become an opportunity for those often who don't have that platform, who don't have that voice, and who don't have that opportunity.
Amazing. Hi everyone, I'm Carmen Vincent. I'm the director and producer of Teacher of Patience, which was the third film. Thank you. Come grab a postcard from me afterwards. But great to be here with you all today.
Hey everybody, I'm Evan Knowles. I'm the associate producer for Teacher Patience.
Well, as you can see behind me, if you would like to submit a question, or if you get the point where you just feel like you need to raise your hand, I'm happy to call on you as well. But it strikes me, one of the things that probably is my favorite thing about Cinema Center these days is this opportunity, right? We've got a couple of filmmakers, we've got a couple of people here talking about things that are going on in the community. And I want to start with you guys a little bit and talk about what was the thing that started the passion that led to actually a film happening? Because I know that the process of making a film is arduous at times, and you guys both came up with something that really kind of spoke to important things that we want to talk about.
Thank you. So I'm passionate about the topic of teacher patience because I'm myself in part of the disability community. I ended up attending one of the Emily talks one day and was so struck by the family's vulnerability and the practical advice they'd give to first responders, and I just thought what they were doing was really special. Like you said, giving a platform to a population that often does not get a platform, like the disability community. And just watching the films today, it makes me see how powerful it is to have these kinds of platforms just between, Barricade Sunday and Teacher of Patience, like seeing the similarities of how certain populations can be mistreated or misunderstood is really disheartening.
So truly this is her passion project. She has been the driving force for everything here. My world day-to-day is not in filmmaking, but it's been such an easy buy-in on my part because I'm seeing her passion, and just the story behind it is so important. It's been easy for me to be able to work from home, and maybe 5 times a day she'll call in, hey Evan, can you come give your feedback on this? And I'm always willing to take that time out of my day to kind of drive in and finish this important film, just because it has such a great mission, and seeing her passion is really just creates buy-in for everyone who kind of listens in it and can see it in her eyes.
Thanks. And a little bit of background, we've been partners for 8 years, so
right.
That's where that comes from.
And also now, with this kind of storytelling and these kinds of opportunities, it's been a weekend full of stories. How do you think these stories help us for the work that you guys do?
I think it's vitally important to tell these stories, right? And I think we would all agree after seeing just the films we saw today, let alone those of you who've seen many throughout the weekend. It's a perspective that when we get in our rhythms of life, we don't always see and experience. Being in the nonprofit space, I get exposure to some of it, right? But it's just so important to know, hear, and be a part of people's stories that are outside of your day-to-day. Just the growth that can happen from that.
I think where film comes in an interesting way, one of my favorite moments of Teacher of Patience is when you can hear your voice asking Emily, do you have Down syndrome? And she talks a ton. She's a chatty gal.
Yeah.
When you ask that question, she's silent. And I think it's important because you see this look behind her eyes that says, why are you asking me about the least interesting thing about me?
Exactly. Yep.
And I think so often there are two people sitting in front of me who I've gone back and forth with about, can I own a little part of your story if it will help amplify it? And there's this element of permission over and over again. Habitat does a beautiful job with how you temporarily take ownership of someone's story to help make it louder. It's not permanent ownership, it's like permission granted to tell your story to the people who will only listen to me or who will only listen to a film at a festival, right? You could maybe knock on their door every day and they wouldn't hear Emily's story.
Yeah.
But if you put it in an art house cinema, they're interested. And I think that as people who, I'm looking at panelists who maybe wield power in more traditional ways, whether it's because of the color of our skin, our stature in the community, whatever, is how are you responsible over the stories that you get to have temporary custody of? And how are you constantly making sure that you're the right vehicle to tell that story, no matter how much fun you're having, right? I think that storytellers can fall in love with the story and forget the person, and
Yeah.
I thought y'all did an incredible job of not doing that
Thank
in
you.
your film, and yeah.
Well, and I thought, you know, I always compliment Christine, Amanda, and Alex who put together the festival, but I thought in particular these blocks were put together because it did build us toward, at the end, the becoming the storyteller, and the opportunity, you know, not just to have your story told, but to put yourself in the position of the teller and get to have that opportunity. And I thought it was really cool to think about it in that way. That, right, that, you know, that we have these stories and these stories are important, but also it's important to empower people to tell their own. And I know, you know, I just happen to know some of the work that you've been doing, and how does that, you know, how can we do more of that, I guess, here in Fort Wayne?
Well, we don't have to empower anyone. We have to listen. We have to go outside of our bubbles. We have to choose the people that we platform. I'm kind of cynical, and I do this thing when I open an email from an arts organization where I'm like, oh shit, what are we gonna see? It's gonna be another version of the white status quo. And this year so I do that even once people prove me wrong, right? I'm like, well, this time they're gonna disappoint me again. And it's been amazing this year. I told you this when we met, opening Cinema Center emails, because I'm consistently like, oh, well, I mean, so they have some diverse voices today, but who knows what'll happen tomorrow? You've been showing up. It's not about empowering people to tell their stories. We can't empower anyone except ourselves to care about their stories. And I think in Fort Wayne, Cinema Center is doing a good job of that. I think looking at who you follow, who you engage with, who you hire, who you put on panels, it's about listening, not about empowering. I said that like a fact. To me, that is what it is. That is what it is about. Who you listen to.
And the thing that I see in the work that we do at Habitat is this idea of momentum, right? So it's a pretty arduous program our families have to go through. They're going to spend 200 plus hours donating their time, putting in sweat equity on the job site, volunteering here locally, in the classroom to get prepared for home ownership. And so oftentimes what I see is they are in this process, they meet a lot of people along the way and get to share their story, and then they get this sense of accomplishment, right? So they see what hard work they've put in over a period of 9 to 18 months, and they get to share that story, and I've seen it time and time again, just that confidence grow. And then I've seen them just make all kinds of changes and improvements in their lives, just because of, I guess maybe confidence more than anything else, and being able to share their story. And one of my greatest hopes is that we just create opportunities for authentic relationship, right? And so when people get to know people on a real level, and it's not I'm here to save the day, but it's let me get to know you. You've got something to teach me, and I might have something to teach you, and that's what authentic relationship can look like. I see that confidence grow, and the themes keeps coming back up, but I see a platform, right? I see an opportunity for people to be seen and known.
Well, it's one of the things I love about Teacher of Patience is just from the title, right? The Teacher of Patience, it's active. It's not like, this is not a passive thing or a description. This is something this person does. And I like that you come to it with that frame. And, was that a conscious decision you were going for when you put this together?
Yeah, I think what unfortunately happens in a lot of disability narratives is something we in the community like to call inspiration porn, where the disabled characters are these inspiring heroes who do no wrong and are perfect humans, or the family members are. It's just, with Emily, I wanted to create a multidimensional character because she is multidimensional like the rest of us. So I think, her dad would always call her the Teacher of Patience, and I just ran with that because I think it's a title that shows that she, like everyone else, has good days and bad days, and both of those can result in teaching patience. Yeah.
And I think that was one of the beauties of that film, but we saw that thread throughout all of them is it's not this conquer the world thing, right? Like, we all have those high moments, we all have those low moments, and there's beauty in the hard, right? And I think I really was just drawn into that, how there would be 1 minute where she'd be cussing out her folks, and the next minute I love you and hugging her, right? And
Same, Emily, same.
I'm like, that's not exactly not dissimilar from what we experience as well. It was beautifully captured.
Thank you.
I find myself hearkening back to our conversations yesterday about the panel we did on masculinity and the necessity to get away from that single person hero narrative, American dream, bootstraps. Let's tell the story from the perspective of all the people that helped that person along the way, right? Because I just, stories of connection to me are so much more compelling now than stories of quote unquote achievement. Right? And the ways in which you build in that opportunity to see those points of connection and how meaningful they are, those kinds of stories, they, at least for me, they resonate so much stronger now than somebody who is overcoming obstacles.
Right. Absolutely. And a lot of disability narratives can kind of lean into that and show, well, this person has Down syndrome, but they have a job and are getting married and achieving all these things. And that's beautiful to show. But it's also beautiful to show people like Emily, who might not get a job or get married, but she's still a valid human being, doing what she loves to do. And it's okay that she's not climbing mountains. She's living and loving her family and doing what she can for the community. And it doesn't have to look like what society deems as productive or achievement.
And there was a line in the film, I think it was her mom, that said, Emily has a place in this world.
Yeah.
And that struck out, that resonated with me.
Yeah.
I think what's a bit heartbreaking and film, even if it's not achievement or inspiration porn, can still follow an arc where at the end you have this scrolling text that says, here, let's tie it all up in a bow. And I think when you settle in and let the real story wash over you, is that and I'm working away from violence language. So, everything's like a war on something. And it's what if it's not? What if it's not a war on that thing? What if it's just us trying to get better at that thing? So I want to say battles, but each of these journeys that we're on, in our city, to have everyone have an equal opportunity to succeed and have a life worth living, to have everyone have a platform. I really don't like the phrase participatory photography, because who are they participating with? They own it. They are the owners of the camera, the owners of the shot. It is theirs. They are not participating in a program. They are making art. And we put these languages, especially in the disability community, these fun language on stuff. And it's no, Emily is worthy because she's alive.
Yeah.
Everyone that showed up in the summer of 2020 was worthy of safety and protection and validation by the leadership in our city because they're alive, not because they did it right or did it wrong, because they're alive, because they're human, because they're a part of the fabric that makes us worth being just by existing. And I think that following that sad arc across it, that probation isn't, decarceration isn't. We're still an incredibly carceral state, including New York, still among the worst places to be imprisoned. That in each of these, there's still that striving. The story isn't finished, even if you can wrap up that 30-minute film and think like, I learned something about the protests of summer 2020, that we're still going on all of these issues.
That was the striking thing to me when I was sitting there, was like, oh God, how little, like watching the pain and the suffering and the angst on people's faces, and then being like, but what did change?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I was sitting there and like just, it made me so emotional that Ethan Saylor died the same way George Floyd did. And
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
this happens a lot in the disability community and racially, and just it's so frustrating to see those through lines, and that this just happens. And what are we gonna do? I don't know. As a filmmaker, I don't know.
Tell stories.
Yeah.
I think that's the hard part, is, you know, there's this reciprocal relationship we have with our audiences, right? Which is that we have a responsibility to the stories we're telling, but also to the people we're telling them to. But you know, like, it's also like, it's hard to feel like you've made an impact, right? To feel like your story has contributed to that conversation in a meaningful way. And it's one of the things I really try and do with my students when we talk about these things is really trying to frame it that way, that you're contributing to an ongoing discourse. And, you know, while the ripples may not read as giant waves, they're there, right? Yeah. And storytelling is that. It's,
right.
You know, participating in these larger conversations, and you've got to participate meaningfully, and you've got to understand the perspective you're coming from. You know, we've had a couple of films in the festival that have inspired conversations kind of afterwards, where it was like, is that the conversation? Is that the way we wanted to participate in that conversation? And that's hard, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, is, you know, showing that film, is that the way we want to participate in how that conversation's framed? And I don't know if there's always a good answer to that
Right.
question.
Because when you tell a story, you can't control how it's received, interpreted, or what's next.
Yeah. We're trying really hard with Teacher Patients to perform well in an impact campaign where we show this film to first responder groups, and that spans across EMS and police and fire, social workers, gas workers, anyone who can have touch points with the disability community in an emergency situation. So that's kind of our attempt at having this be meaningful, and we try to pair it with like educational resources from the family and from other experts. But yeah, you're right, it's hard to make sure you make an impact. Yeah.
So the Slido hasn't exactly been lighting up, so I just wanted to check in with the group here. Does anybody want to ask any questions?
I think it was a very good block of 4 movies, and I thought it was interesting to start with The Last Race and get a glimpse of how the political is personal. There was an instance of one woman running, and just the running, putting her hat in the ring, was what was important. But what the other 3 films revealed is how important it is to have the right people in elected position to move forward with each of the issues. So now I'm going to make my political announcement to say, we've got an election coming up next month where we have a chance, perhaps, to change some of the trajectories so that some of the visions and the need for compassion and understanding of the people we elect, because eventually they're the ones who implement change. If what we're looking for is change beyond what community leaders are pushing for with your love and your energy and your brilliance and your vision, we end up needing some of that also in the people who get elected. So vote.
Amen.
Other questions? Well, I want to thank you guys for coming and being a part of this. I know Sunday mornings and you know it's a weird time to come be part of a movie discussion, but we really appreciate you coming out because I've said this at least in 3 different panels this weekend, and I mean it wholeheartedly. This is the best of Cinema Center. When we can get people together and have these conversations and allow the movies to inspire what they inspire and create conversations with the audience, I think that's when we're at our best. And so thank you for allowing us to do that, because that was you, that wasn't us. So
Well, in the last film, they said art and activism go hand in hand. And I think that you said you hope that showing it to first responders makes it impactful. It is. It is, by existing, impactful.
And it'll transcend just
Yeah.
first responders.
And all of the above, yes.
Yeah.
Do everything with it. But I think we sell ourselves short and we burn out. And not everyone can run. And not everyone can make art. And not everyone can rally. I was going to say the troops. Rally the friendship circles. I don't know. I'm trying to take like the patriarchy out of my language. But we all have a role, and art is like both healing and activating at the same time. And it is alone. It is. It is. Teacher of Patience is impactful alone.
Thank you.
And anything else that happens will just multiply that.
My gosh.
Same with all of these films.
Y'all are amazing.
Well, thank you very much.